Keyframes are really the heart of any animation package, because without keyframes, you don't have motion. Now, keyframes are not only something that you find in computer animation. Keyframes have been around since the beginning of animation, because they simply are something that record some kind of change in motion, scale, rotation, skewing, or transformation. So, if you have something that's at rest on frame number 1, that's your first keyframe. And if at frame 5 it moves a little bit, that's your second keyframe. And on a computer program such as Toom Studio, whatever happens in between frame 1 and frame 5 is interpolated by the computer, which means the computer will figure out how to move that object on its own from that first frame to the 5th frame. Now, if you take a box and you have it on one frame, and then you rotate it on another frame, what happens as well is the computer will interpolate that and know what degree amount to move that object. Now, Toom Studio will also indicate to you what's happening in the timeline. Let me go ahead and extend this to show you some of the little symbols that it would put in place for you. Now, if you see these little upper and lower triangles, this will always let you know when you have some kind of scale or skew happening in your scene. Something is moving or transitioning in some way that way. If you see these little boxes here, what these squares mention to you is motion. There's something happening. So as you see here from the wheel here, the wheel is moving from this frame to this frame. And right here, the child, we have no motion at all. There's nothing happening. So that's why you don't see any little symbols. Another thing you'll see is these little lines here. Whenever you see these little lines, it also tells you that some kind of motion is happening. Some kind of in-between is happening from one frame to another. And in-between is another way of saying what the computer is doing. And tween is the computer term for in-between. Now, what does that mean? All right, let's talk about traditional animation. Make believe that we are working at a big animation company, working traditionally on paper, and I'm the guy who's doing the main animation. I'm the main keyframe artist, and you guys are the in-betweeners. What that means is, if I'm drawing a character, I'm going to draw the starting poses and the ending poses and a pose in the middle of those two poses. For example, a character is going to swing a baseball bat. So I'm going to draw him as he's about to swing the bat, and then I'll draw him in the middle of that swing, and at the end, I'm drawing 3 pictures, and I'm going to get coffee. I'm done. You guys are the in-betweeners. You're going to take my 3 keyframes, and you're going to draw each frame that transitions from that first frame into the middle frame, and then from the middle frame to the ending frame. So I'm drawing 3, you guys are drawing like 20. So you'll draw the bat moving a little bit forward and more forward and more forward until it reaches the swing in the middle, and then from the swing in the middle to the contact with the ball, you guys are going to draw the rest of those frames. The computer will interpolate that for you. Now, it's important to remember there's 2 kinds of interpolation, depending on whether you're using a 2D animation application such as Toom Studio or a 3D animation package such as Lightwave or Maya. Now, when you're working in 2D, the computer cannot figure out the 3D motion of that. So you won't see the bat actually change into form and get closer to the camera and get further from the camera as you would in a 3D application, because it deals with space and pixels a little bit more differently. So in a 2D application, you'll have to manually draw the positional changes and the way the ball or the bat would deform as it gets closer and further away from the camera. So, once again, you'll also get another symbol if you have an animation in the child. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the child here of the wheel, and I'm going to just go ahead and right-click and add a keyframe. So you can see that whenever you have some animation happening on a child of something, for example, the truck is the main peg, and we have the child, the wheel, you get a little red box that tells you there's something happening with that animation as well. So keyframes will record the change of something in an animation, whether it's rotation, scale, transformation, motion, doesn't really matter. It's going to record that at that spot and then interpolate it as it changes into the next keyframe.